Okay, so we just played BIOS Origins, which is Phil Eklund's civilization building game. It is BIOS Origins second edition. This is Origins, which is about as close. I guess it's the closest thing to a predecessor. BIOS Origins actually was this and BIOS Megafauna over there put together, those first editions, and that made a very interesting game. But this is brief overview is essentially you have one of four Homo species, and you are trying to just evolve and develop skills and do things to just get points. The game is divided into 4 epochs, and you score points depending on what epoch you're in. So in the first epoch, you're getting culture points based on how much mysticism you have. Second epoch, how many cities you have. Third epoch, how much diversity you have. And then in the fourth epoch, you're just trying to push whichever track you feel like you're doing best in, and you can also move the philosophy to stop things from being scored, and there's stuff like that. So on any given turn, you are doing right here, you're doing these actions from bottom to top. So you can do what these icons are, and I won't go over the icons, but essentially you can do these icons that'll give you these different abilities over here. And the gist of it, the majority of what you're going to do is be putting elders on these cards, which will give you temporary upgrades to your tracks here, your tech tree, and also actions that you can do in later turns. And those actions will be just any number of things: domesticating, cultivating, making just different things that will progress the game along. So you do that until you get through all the cards. You get through the cards by challenging the gods. So you basically decide how long the game is by how often you challenge the gods. Challenging the gods will let you go to the next card, which will do more events, which will cause more things to happen. And it's the number of cards is equal to the number of players. So in a 4-player game, you're going to have 4 cards per epic.
It's maxes at 3 actually, even with 4 players, just 3.
So it's 3 per epic. But there's twice as much in the first epic.
That's right, depending on the variant you choose.
But so it can be a quick game if you're really pushing it along, or it can be a slow game if you're really not pushing it along. So I have played the original Origins a number of times, and it is my favorite Phil Eklund game. Sophia has not, so we'll get opinions from both. Sophia, you want to?
Sure. So this was my first time playing any variety of Origins. Also my first time playing any of the BIOS games, although I've played a couple of other Eklund games before and liked them. But I really like this a lot. I feel like I've got a lot to learn about it. It felt like kind of snowbally. It looked like I took an early lead, and then I just kept that early lead, and it didn't seem very hard to do.
So you had elders. You got a lot of, so basically you start off with these things here.
I started with my ruling class being culture, which let me get my pawns out of emotions.
And the pawns are what you need in order to be able to do actions. And you got your pawns out a lot quicker than either of us did, which allowed you to do more things than either of us did. And that just, like you said, it kind of snowballed from there. And once you start getting more actions and more actions, that allow you to do more things than the rest of us. So it can definitely be like a snowball effect. Whereas you can see she was much higher on a lot of the tech tracks and had more stuff out.
And we
though
called the game at the end of Epic
Yeah.
3, basically. So we didn't play out Epic 4, which wasn't
I mean,
really
it was
necessary.
like 2 more cards, and we had a general idea what was going to happen. And I imagine with more experienced play, it might be more even. Also, with more players, we might have more wars and more like there was not that much interaction in this game, but I feel like there could be more interaction once we know what we're doing, and also once we have more players to kind of
Right.
crowd out the board a bit.
Overall, the interaction that there was, I really liked, though. I liked trying to guess what ideas other people were going
Yeah.
to be inventing so that I could make sure that I got to share the Eureka bonuses with them.
So yeah, one thing that we didn't describe was the fact that if you are here, you just need 1 pawn in order to invent that idea. But if you're here, you need 2. If you're here, you need 3. So if you're here and it's any pawns, not just your pawns. So if you're, for example, here and you need 3, you need 3 people to put pawns there. So you can try to just put things in places where you think people will go to get the benefit. Because even if somebody else invents that idea, you still get like the one-off benefit. So for example, right here, you would go up in metallurgy. If you go here, you would go up in energy. So that's there's a little bit of a cooperation element there, and you can also kind of just piggyback on somebody else's actions.
Plus, it felt like there was a lot of incentive to move the game along, which I liked, by challenging the gods, because it essentially put you 1 ahead in the bidding, because the bidding's just once around, and you. So if you've got the same number of elders to spend, you can just name that number and take the card. It also. The other incentive to move it along is that the terrain matters a lot, and so being the one who controls which terrain moves.
Yeah,
and where it moves to.
when you challenge the gods, it will change the climate. So forests will become deserts, deserts will become forests, ice will become water, water will become ice, and you choose where this stuff happens. So you could just block people off with different types of weather changing patterns and different terrain to kind of block people off with Sophia, which Sophia did a lot to kind of prevent people from attacking her when she was, behind in metallurgy and stuff like that. So, yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, the sharp-eyed among you might notice that there's not enough terrain tiles on the board because we started this as a 3-player game.
But so I going into this having played Origins, there are definitely bits of this that, and again, this is a first impression, but there are definitely bits of this that I like more than the original Origins, and bits that I like less than the original Origins. So the action selection, the original game just had drawing a card. Like that was basically it. You would draw a card and you would hope that card had something that you wanted to do. Sometimes you can draw a card from another player, and there was like a little gamey element there where you're trying to draw cards in a certain order to prevent another player from getting that card. But ultimately, you were just drawing a card. And this one, you have 12 or 9 cards available that you can do stuff on. So there's a lot more options on things that you can do. So this mechanism is really cool, and the fact that you can kind of like stack them to do a lot of actions on your turn is a lot better than the original game, where you just have not that many. So these are the actions in the original game here, and you're pretty much stuck with just these in the first era and those in the second era, and those are the actions you will have forever. Like they're never going to change. So the fact that there are this many more actions that are possible over the course, some of these are events, but the fact that there are a lot more things that you can do in the game is adds a lot more variability and a lot more just choice in what you can do. There are things that I miss from the old game, both thematic elements. So, for example, things like for example, domesticating animals, and the old game follows Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel a lot more than this game does. In that, for example, domesticating zebras are really hard. I mean, they're really hard in real life. That's why we didn't domesticate zebras. But in this game, you can domesticate pretty much anything with just the domesticate action, and it's fine. And that I feel like isn't as thematically accurate. There was also in the original game there was an innovation and a fecundity track, which I'm going to try to grab here. Let me see.
Although really, with every turn representing 1,000 years or so, you can pretty much domesticate anything if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to grab. Okay, so in the original game you have this, which was an innovation and a population. So when you went up in population, you had more chances to get chaos, which was bad. And innovation allowed you to do more actions. So at the start you only have one action. When you increase your innovation, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 actions. And this is population actions, which is just kind of putting people out on the board. So there was a really interesting tension between I want to increase my innovation, and I have to basically decrease my fecundity in order to do that. The thinking is if you're too busy just making babies, you're not actually innovating. So there was this really interesting tension between because these cubes would go down, and you wanna increase your innovation, but it's tough because basically you needed to juggle the cubes, so you would have innovation actions, but it would be a lot easier to get population. And there was again that I'm not explaining it terribly well, but that kind of balance between the different cubes and doing things was a really interesting part of the game and a really frustrating part of the game. Whereas in this game, there is none of that. You can just spread out, and there doesn't seem to be any repercussions. You can just keep putting dudes out on the board, and it's fine, and you're never going to suffer chaos like you do in even Neanderthal over there, which follows Origins a lot more. But yeah, you can just keep putting dudes out, and the actions aren't determined by really anything other than having the cards for it. So the kind of that struggle between like managing your fecundity and managing your innovation was a lot more interesting, I think, in the old game. There was also more randomness, which it's weird that I'm praising randomness, but the randomness in the old game came from just die rolls. So, for example, climate change happened not when you challenged the gods, but when a card. Well, if you drew a card and it was a public card, then like catastrophes would happen, and global climate change would happen, and it would just everything on the board would change, and it would happen. It wouldn't be a person that decided, oh, I'm gonna move a polar ice cap from here to here, or I'm gonna move a desert to forest from here to here. That seems a lot more power to give a player than I guess. I feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel thematically accurate that one player is deciding, how climate change is happening. And it seems also counter to what Phil Eklund wanted or claimed to want to do with Origins, in that you don't have this kind of godlike player that controls everything. So I don't know. Again, first play, but those elements didn't really appeal to me as much as the kind of more simulational elements in Origins. Does it make for a better game, a gamier game? I don't know. I guess. But I don't know. Again, first play, and I would have to play it a few more times to see. Definitely the mechanics in this game I enjoyed more. Occasionally, there were still elements where I got stuck. So, for example, the classic getting stuck in Africa happened in the old game a lot, and it happened in this game. I was stuck in Africa for half the game, where I really couldn't spread out. there are still times where you can't do anything. And that was a problem with the old game, where you're just kind of like, there's a bottleneck once you get like a certain amount of energy, and you're just going through the deck trying to be able to get the thing that you need to move further on a track. And there were times where I just couldn't do anything. Like, I had no actions. I can put a thing out, or I can do really nothing other than, say, challenge the gods. So those elements are still in the game, and I'm a little disappointed that they didn't kind of design that out where you can have, more actions to do things. But for the most part, it's still an interesting game. It's still a game that I would be happy to play. I'm looking forward to playing this more and seeing how that plays out. I'm also obviously still interested in playing the campaign, so going from Genesis to Megafauna to Origins. I'm not getting rid of this though. I'm still definitely playing this and the original BIOS Origins, because I feel like that is also a really interesting game. Perhaps more interesting than this. I don't know. I guess time will tell. But yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it more. All right.